Hey guys, I'm back with a writing lesson. I want to talk about the first book in a series. When you remember, we're writing a series now where it's the same main character, the same character's friends, and things like that. Just like Junie B, or Henry and Mudge, or Poppleton, or Mr. Putter and Tabby. Okay, you should be keeping the same characters. But when you go to put your books in order, which one is going to come first? So I'm going to read two, remember Gretchen and the Treehouse Stories? I'm going to read two little beginnings here, and I want you to think about which one would come first in the series. It says, the first one is Gretchen heard a noise. Peep, peep, call. Peep, peep, call. What is that? She thought. She crawled down on the path. It was a fierce bird. Gretchen felt afraid. I'll be brave, she thought. She scooped up the bird in her sweater. Now, I'd shared that one with you before. Now, listen to the second one. Gretchen had just moved to the country. One day she was in the forest by her new house. I wish I could have a tree fort, Gretchen thought. Sometimes Gretchen was lonely. She wanted a place to play. She looked around the woods. She wondered, what could I build a fort with? Now, which one would come first in the series? Well, if you were thinking about it, you would realize that the second one I read to you about Gretchen moving to the country, that had to come first because that's when she first thought about building her tree fort because she was lonely. And she had just moved there. Okay? So that might be the first book in the series. But the first book in a series has some special things in it. The first book in a series might sound different than the stories that come later in the series because the first book has to give some details about who the main character is and where they are. So the first book in a series plays a special role. It introduces the character and the character's world that you're going to get to know through the rest of the series. So the reader is set up in that first book for all the other books that will follow. And so you have to tell a lot of important details in book one of the series so that the reader can understand the character better and knows what to look for in the other books. Now, attached below, I put the first book in the Henry and Mudge series and Poppleton and Mr. Putter and Tabby. I put a read aloud for you to listen to. If we were at school, I have the books at school to read to you, but I don't have them here at home. So, for example, in the Henry and Mudge books that we've read, did you ever wonder when Henry got his dog Mudge? Well, in Henry and Mudge, the first book, it tells you. It talks about how Henry's an only child and he's lonely, and he says he could use a friend. So then he ends up getting Mudge, and the first book tells how he got Mudge. What about when did Mr. Putter get Tabby? Well, in the first book, it tells you, and I have the first book attached down below that you can listen to. It said Mr. Putter lives alone, and he has no one to tell his stories to, and he likes English muffin and tea and stories. So it introduces you to him and Tabby in the first book. How about Poppleton? How did Poppleton meet his friend Cherry Sue? Well, in the first book, you'll find out that he used to live in the city and he took taxis. He jogged in the park and he went to museums. But then he moved to the country. Almost like the little story I read about Gretchen. And then it tells you how he met Cherry Sue. So there's always a first book that starts off the series, and there's a lot of information that goes into book one of the series, like who the character is, and what the character likes, and where the character lives, even how the character feels, like Henry felt lonely, and Mr. Putter felt lonely. So it also introduces you to characters that are important to the main character, like Mudge and Tabby and Cherry Sue. In Poppleton, it told you how he moved from the city to the country or why he did. So you can add some of these things into book one of your series. But remember, you need to plan your work. I've attached the planning pages down below, and really start to think about your main character. Why are they where they are? Why are they friends with the other characters? And some of those pages will help you think about what the character likes. And it's important to think about these things before you start to write. So remember that you want to think about book one of your series. So today when you write, you can either continue a book that you're working on, a story that you're working on with your characters. You can start a new story with those same characters, because remember, we're writing a series. Or you can think about maybe writing book one of your series. And giving that a try. And I wanted to give one more example. If I was writing about, remember, Max and Bob had gone to the store, my story that I was writing. Now, I might have continued with those characters, but I also have another character that I started that I think I'm going to use for my series. And it's about Michelle. It's about Michelle and her friend Emma. And in this book, I started out telling about Michelle. Michelle was 7 years old, and she loved to go to the beach, especially with her family and friends. She loved to play and run in the sand. And one day she went to the beach with her friend Emma. But see how I started out giving information about, and I might even add more. I might tell how long Michelle and Emma have been friends. Maybe they're best friends and they do everything together. So you think about which book you want to be book one in your series. You might take a story that you've already written and just add the beginning part to make it book one and add some of those things. Look at the chart that I've also attached below that tells you the things that I talked about in this video that go into book one, like who the character is, where they are, how did they get to where they are, how they're feeling, how they met important people in the story. Okay, things like that. I have a chart that's a list, and you can even print that out if you can. Okay? And I will see you next time with another lesson.